I never meant to be the other woman in my own relationship. That sentence sounds like the opening line of a soap opera written by someone who had too much coffee and a grudge against humanity. But that was exactly how Hannah felt the night her world tilted sideways, like a badly hung picture framed for 3 years. She believed she was dating Ethan. 3 years of movie nights, Sunday brunches, shared passwords, inside jokes, and future plans whispered under blankets while rain tapped against the apartment windows. Like a nosy neighbor desperate for gossip, 3 years of believing she was building something real. And then, with one accidental conversation in a grocery store aisle between frozen pizzas and discounted ice cream, Hannah discovered she had apparently been cast in a relationship without ever being informed. That auditions had closed. Welcome to today's story, where commitment was treated like a classified government document, and emotional clarity was hidden more carefully than nuclear launch codes. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories that prove human beings are both deeply lovable and profoundly ridiculous, subscribe to Daily Stories Archive, leave a like, and tell us in the comments, what is the most absurd truth you have ever discovered far too late? Because Hannah's discovery was so outrageous that even the self-checkout machine would have paused to say, "Girl, excuse me." Hannah was 32, a graphic designer, and the kind of woman who organized her spice rack alphabetically, and her feelings in color-coded mental folders. She liked certainty, she liked labels. She liked knowing whether a relationship was casual, serious, exclusive, or headed toward one of those frightening but adorable stores where couples debate throw pillows and mortgage rates. Ethan, on the other hand, was 34 and possessed the emotional consistency of a weather forecast written by a raccoon. Some days he spoke of our future, other days he spoke of living in the moment. And on rare occasions, when cornered by direct questions, he responded with philosophical statements so vague they sounded like fortune cookies, translated by artificial intelligence. We don't need labels, love should be free. The heart knows what it knows, which was beautiful in theory and utterly useless in practice still. Hannah stayed because Ethan was charming, not charming in the polished romantic comedy sense. He was charming in the dangerous way some people are, where every inconsistency is wrapped in a smile so warm it melts your common sense like butter on hot toast. He remembered her favorite coffee order. He kissed her forehead. He sent good morning texts. He introduced her to his friends. He spent holidays with her family. He slept in her bed for nights a week. He discussed adopting a dog. He argued about baby names. He once spent hours helping her assemble a bookshelf from IKEA, which many therapists would classify as a legally binding act of devotion. To Hannah, all evidence pointed to one obvious conclusion. They were in a relationship. Officially. Exclusively. Unequivocally. Or so she thought. The first crack in the illusion appeared during a dinner with her friend, Melissa. Melissa had the unsettling gift of asking questions that sounded casual but landed like grenades. So, Melissa said while stabbing a ravioli with the precision of a surgeon, "When are you to making it official?" Hannah laughed. "What do you mean?" Melissa blinked. "I mean, when is he going to ask you to be his girlfriend?" Hannah nearly inhaled a Crowton. "What?" Melissa lowered her fork. "Wait, he actually asked, right?" Hannah felt her stomach tighten. There are moments when reality shifts so abruptly that your brain refuses to process it. Like missing a stare in the dark. Like hearing your doctor say, "We need to talk." Like realizing you've spent 3 years emotionally furnishing a house that doesn't legally belong to you. "No," Hannah said slowly. "But we've been together for 3 years." Melissa's face performed the expression every friend dreads wearing, the one that says, "I have terrible news and I can't believe you don't already know. Have you ever actually defined what you are?" The question lodged in Hannah's mind like a splinter. That night, she couldn't sleep. Instead, she replayed every conversation she and Ethan had ever had about commitment. Every time she'd used the word boyfriend and he simply smiled. Every time she introduced him as her partner and he never corrected her. Every time he said, "I'm not seeing anyone else," which sounded reassuring until she realized that was not the same thing as saying, "You are my girlfriend." The distinction was so subtle and yet so devastating. One was a commitment. The other was merely a scheduling update. Still, Hannah told herself she was overthinking until the grocery store incident. It was a Tuesday evening. The sort of mundane night where life usually offers nothing more dramatic than choosing between the brands of pasta sauce. Hannah and Ethan were shopping together when they ran into his co-worker, Jason. Jason grinned. "Hey, man, is this your girlfriend?" Hannah smiled automatically. She had answered that question silently 1,000 times. But before she could say anything, Ethan laughed. "Not exactly." 2 words, that was all it took. Not exactly. Jason chuckled awkwardly. Sensing he had just stepped into a live electrical wire, Hannah felt her face freeze. Not exactly. What did that mean? Was she a hobby? A recurring subscription? An emotionally involved roommate with benefits and excellent lasagna? She said nothing in the store. She said nothing in the car. She said nothing until they got home, unloaded the groceries, and Ethan casually asked whether she wanted to watch a documentary about deep-sea squid. That was when Hannah finally turned to him. "What am I to you?" Ethan blinked. The question seemed to confuse him, as if she had asked him to explain quantum mechanics using only refrigerator magnets. "What do you mean? You told Jason I'm not exactly your girlfriend." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, technically, we never had that conversation." Hannah stared at him for a moment. She thought he was joking. Then she realized he was entirely serious. 3 years, 3 birthdays, 2 weddings. 1 funeral, dozens of family gatherings, hundreds of nights together, and in his mind, they had never officially crossed the threshold because no one had ceremonially declared it out loud. It was as though he believed relationships function like vampire lore. No matter how often you invite someone in, they are not truly inside until the correct incantation is spoken. Hannah laughed, not because anything was funny, but because sometimes your brain, in an act of self-defense, turns disbelief into laughter. So all this time, she said, you didn't think we were together? Ethan sighed. I thought we were. Seen where things go. For 3 years? He flinched. I didn't want pressure. Double quotes pressure. The favorite word of people who enjoy all the benefits of commitment, while treating commitment itself like a venomous snake. Hannah paced the kitchen. So you sleep in my bed, spend Christmas with my parents, discuss children, and call me every day. But you're still seeing where things go. Ethan looked genuinely perplexed. I didn't think the title mattered. Of course, the ancient anthem of emotionally unavailable adults. Titles don't matter. Labels don't matter. Definitions don't matter. And yet, somehow, accountability always seems to depend on them. Hannah asked the obvious question. If you met someone else tomorrow, would you consider yourself single? Ethan hesitated. That hesitation was louder than any confession. There it was, the sound of 3 years collapsing in real time. Hannah felt strangely calm, not because she wasn't hurt. But because uncertainty, once exposed, becomes clarity, and clarity is a ruthless kind of mercy. She sat down and asked him one final time. Do you want to be in a committed relationship with me? Ethan stared at the floor. I don't know. There are answers that sting. And then there are answers that cauterize. This was the latter. For 3 years, Hannah had treated ambiguity like a temporary condition, a cloud that would eventually clear. But ambiguity had not been a phase. It had been the relationship, or rather, the lack of one. She packed an overnight bag. Ethan followed her from room to room, insisting he loved her. And perhaps he did. But love without clarity can feel like trying to build a house on fog. Beautiful from a distance, impossible to live in. That night, Hannah stayed with Melissa. Between tears and takeout noodles, she recounted everything. Melissa listened with the solemn expression of a woman trying not to say, I told you so, while absolutely thinking it in bold italic font. Do you know what hurts most? Hannah whispered, I wasn't abandoned tonight. I was never fully chosen. The words hung in the room, and once spoken, they could not be unsaid. Over the next week, Ethan texted constantly, I miss you. I love you. You're overreacting. We can fix this. Let's not throw away what we have. Hannah noticed how every message focused on preserving his comfort, not addressing her pain. Not once did he say, I was wrong. Not once did he say, I should have given you certainty. Not once did he say, you deserve better. Instead, he wanted the relationship to continue exactly as before, with all the emotional benefits and none of the formal responsibility. Like renting a luxury apartment and insisting the lease is too restrictive. Hannah met him one final time in a quiet cafe. He looked exhausted. So, did she? I love you, he said. I know. I just never understood why the title was so important. Hannah stirred her coffee slowly, because titles aren't decorations. They are declarations. He said nothing. She continued, when you refuse to name something, you reserve the right to deny it existed. That sentence hit him like a physical blow. For the first time, Ethan seemed to understand. Not fully, but enough. He asked if there was any chance they could start over. Hannah looked at the man she had loved for 3 years, the man who had occupied her life like a permanent guest with no intention of signing the paperwork, and she smiled sadly. I can't keep auditioning for a role I've already been playing. Then she stood and walked away. The months that followed were difficult. Grief has a peculiar shape. When you lose not only a person, but the story you thought you were living. Hannah mourned birthdays that would never happen, trips they would never take, and a future that turned out to be written in disappearing ink. But she also began to heal. She went to therapy. She reconnected with friends. She rediscovered hobbies Ethan had always dismissed as cute. She learned that confusion is not romance, ambiguity is not depth. And love that fears definition is often love that fears responsibility. 1 year later, Hannah posted her story online. Thousands of strangers responded. Some laughed in disbelief. Some shared nearly identical experiences. Many admitted they, too, had mistaken consistent attention for actual commitment. The most upvoted comment read, if someone enjoys every privilege of being your partner, but refuses to call you one, they are keeping the emergency exit unlocked. Hannah saved that comment because it captured everything she had learned. Months later, she met Daniel. On their third date, he looked at her across a candlelit table and said, with the calm certainty of someone unafraid of language, I'd like you to be my girlfriend. No riddles. No philosophical fog. No 3-year scavenger hunt for basic clarity. Just a simple sentence, precise and intentional. Hannah nearly cried, not because the words were grand, but because they were clear. And after living inside uncertainty for so long, clarity felt like sunlight. Today, Hannah is happily engaged. When people ask how she knew Daniel was different, she always gives the same answer. He never made me guess whether I mattered, and that, perhaps, is the real lesson of this story. Love should not feel like decoding encrypted messages. Commitment should not require forensic analysis. And if someone can share your bed, your family, your holidays, and your dreams, but still claims they are not exactly your partner, they are enjoying the movie without ever buying a ticket. Sometimes the most painful discoveries are also the most liberating, because the moment Hannah realized she had been in a relationship without officially being in one was the moment she stopped settling for emotional squatting and started demanding genuine presence. In doing so, she found something infinitely better than what she lost. She found certainty. She found self-respect. She found a love that was not afraid to introduce itself by name. So now we want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that someone you loved was far less committed than you believed? Would you stay with a person who spent 3 years seeing where things go? And what do you think is worse, being rejected immediately or realizing years later that you were never truly chosen? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories where truth arrives late but hits like thunder, subscribe to Daily Stories Archive, activate the notification bell, and share the story with someone who deserves a love that never hides behind the words. Not exactly.